All right. It has been a hot minute since I have done one of these, but David's like the only person I ever talked to. I'm like, podcast style, let's get David on. But no, David and I have been in consistent, communication as we have just through our friendship. And in one of our previous conversations, he had recommended this book to me, Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. The subtitle is Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul. And he said, you need to get this book. You need to read this book, specifically for me regarding a relationship. And as I was reading it, there were aha moments as far as for me kind of seeing things through the masculine lens. But then there were also aha moments because he does touch on a few things about like the wounds of women and the woman's heart and how that gets wounded over time. And so those were the moments where I was just like crying. I was like, oh, he just knows me so well. But so when I finished the book, I was like, all right, David, we need to have a conversation. I need like a debrief. Like, let's have a debrief conversation. But I knew that this conversation would bless so many other people. So I wrote out some questions, which I don't typically have questions in advance, but I felt like this conversation was important enough that I wanted to make sure that I touched on some really important topics. We could go on for hours about this book, but I tried to limit it. So we'll just kind of see where this conversation goes. But do you want to give a little intro, maybe as far as like how you came across this book and how it maybe impacted you at the time that you read it?
Okay, so let me just drop in on this real fast. I actually mixed this book up with a different book.
Oh, that's
this
fun.
is actually, yeah, this is like no joke. I actually read a different book thinking this was the same book. So I think that what God was doing with me, because this actually did something to me. This book actually kind of jacked me. So there's another book that's and of course it's freaking escaping me right now. I thought that book that I read was this one. So I'm like sitting there I'm reading Wild at Heart, and I'm like, I ain't never read this freaking book in my entire life. What the hell is this? And I've been referencing it thinking it was this other book.
Well, now I have to know what the other book was.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to text you because of course I'm on the dang podcast. I can't remember what the dang book is. So but anyway, this one though, and the other one, I can't remember the title, but it was really about it's a man's sexual journey as a Christian and what that looks like, and having to really not tame that part of us, but to be aware of the pitfalls of it and how our sexuality actually is shaped by the world. And anyway, so in that book, it actually had some really good lessons as well too. I think it's kind of geared toward that other side of masculinity that actually needs to be put in a different place. Right. But this one was about masculinity in general, and I'm gonna tell you, actually, it was funny when I told my wife my wife is actually praying for both of us right now because we both have been kind of going through some things to slay, not about our marriage, not like that, but just like things from our past and stuff that we both kind of that we need to kind of like slay individually. Well, when I told her, I said, yeah, I gotta read this. I gotta reread the book. Obviously I had mistaken. Well, I told her to reread the book, and she was like, well, I've got it. So she didn't tell me her experience with it, which was actually hilarious in itself. And so she let me, I finished it up, and then she goes, I just need to tell you that this book actually changed the trajectory of my relationship with men, period. Wow. Like everything changed, because she was at the time dating, he was a guy that was he was in the CIA, Blackwater. He was definitely like a special operations individual in the military. I won't get into the whole thing. And I hope to meet this guy someday. He's actually sounds like a really nice guy, like a really good guy. Well, at the time though, he had massive PTSD, had come back from a tour, and I think it was Afghanistan or Iraq. It was one of the two. And my wife and him were supposed to get married, and she actually had just read the book after they had broken up, or actually right before they broke up, because she had to release him because he was changing up things about what they were supposed to do together, as you know, in getting engaged and stuff. And so she actually had to release him. She said it's probably one of the hardest things she ever had to do in her entire life. So anyway, when the two of us were talking about this, she was telling me that the way that she thought about men completely changed because she didn't know that men were going through this stuff. Right. And she didn't know what that looked like from her side. So it changed, and then she said that David, this book has, even with her dad, it changed everything too. So it was a really good thing. You know what I mean?
I think it helped me. I mean, I feel like when I was in the New Age, there was a lot around divine masculinity and divine, like divine masculine, divine feminine, which, my beliefs obviously have changed around that. But
Yeah.
I think that there is such value in really truly understanding that men and women are very different. And we're not raised with trying to, well, first, we're not raised with learning about ourselves and our own gender, let alone learning about the other gender and, and how they work. So it did open my eyes. It allowed me actually to have a lot more compassion, and in general, but, specifically my partner, and I think it's helped my patience in understanding that, and understanding his journey.
Yeah. Sorry, I did turn my tray back on again. It gets cut off. No, it did. No, it does. It did change stuff. And let me, like actually let's dive in, because I want to tell you a little bit more about some of the things that actually it's caused me to kind of go through too.
Okay. I wanted to give kind of like a little, so before I read this book, I went onto Amazon and I read all the reviews because I thought you had recommended the book.
Yeah. You can slap me later on that one.
But I was reading through all the reviews, and it's interesting, the reviews are really hit or miss, which is typical, I think, for any book in general, but I think Christian books specifically. And one of the greatest criticisms it got was that it wasn't biblical, and that it took Bible verses out of context. So I went in kind of with that lens. There were things that I would say, I don't think there was anything that wasn't completely biblical. There were things that I was like, I don't know that I would necessarily come at it from that angle. So I would just I would recommend for people who are reading the book, understand that first and foremost, the book you need to be reading is the Bible. And anything supplemental, just keep in mind that it is written by man, by a sinner. And so that's kind of just the little caveat that I wanted to, because of course, if I'm sharing something on my channel, I want to be honest about, like, the Bible first and foremost. There's great information in there, but also I think take some of it with a grain of salt.
Yes, no, I agree. And I actually, you're making a good point, because there's some stuff in there that I could say, yeah, that's totally charismatic, whatever. Like some of the stuff, and then not down to charismatics, but there's some things that I just don't align with charismatics anymore. But like you said, there's some Bible verses in there that I think were taken out. Actually, your one question that you did ask me, it was the number 7 question. About the heart is desperately wicked.
You want to just
that actually
that one?
Yeah, can I dive into that one?
Yeah, so let me
go ahead.
The question was, what's your take biblically on the Old Testament that says the heart is wicked, and from Jeremiah, and the New Testament that says the Holy Spirit renews the mind and the heart, and we are a new creation in Christ? How do we utilize our hearts when we still have sin?
So that question, and Anna, you asked some really insightful questions anyway, but this one is actually very important to understand, because it goes through the basis of our theology as Christians. And actually, like I told you before, I'm way more reformed in my theology than anything now, but it addresses the total depravity of man and of woman, of humanity. And what's so important to understand is that from the tulip perspective, the reform perspective, is that before you're regenerate, you are totally depraved. Like, you are absolutely sinful. But I think what we as Christians do is we assign that sinfulness to ourselves, as if we're not being regenerated and we're not in the sanctification process. Right. So when Christians say, we're desperately wicked and yada yada, that's what I was. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I was before God obviously intervened in my life, brought me into him, and then now I'm on a completely different trajectory. When it says that we're behind battle, like we're behind enemy lines, when it's saying that, is every single person outside of faith, I mean, really is of the world. And that goes into like one of the other questions about sin, the devil, and the world. But knowing that, we have to look at ourselves from the perspective of being in Christ's care now and in the grace of God. We have to. And if we don't, what we'll end up doing is we'll assign ourselves things that characterize us, kind of like what the book was talking about, the names that characterize us completely different from what God characterizes us as. Because now I do have a new name. Now I have a new heart. Now I do have a new trajectory eternally. And that's really the truth. Now I was completely depraved. I was that dude. I mean, shenanigan man. Like I was that before. I'm not that anymore though. And that's what the grace of God is. So, and to go about it biblically, when Jesus Christ says that I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and you actually believe that in faith, you then are on Abraham's side now. You are in the Romans chapter 4, where the faithfulness of God exude itself through the character of Abraham, to where now he is living a different life. He's believing God for different things because of the faith that he puts in God. You know what I mean? But also it's kind of crazy to think about what the kind of faith that God puts in us, which is kind of nuts too, and then get into that whole thing. But that's the truth. So then if I sin, this is what goes into Romans chapter 7. Is it me sinning, or is it my sin that's acting out in me? I'm still doing it, obviously, and I need to be forgiven of that. But that struggle, therefore, there's no condemnation for those of us in Christ Jesus, from Romans chapter 8, verse 1. I remember that again, I'm being sanctified. My mind's being renewed, like Romans chapter 12. These things are becoming a part of me now, and I am no longer that David from old. So it's like when my friends look at me now, they're like, yeah, you ain't that dude anymore, And it's because I no longer am totally depraved. Now I've got a new heart that's been placed in me, and I'm a new individual based off of who Jesus is.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that, that's part of why I wanted to give that caveat, was because there's kind of this underlying tone throughout the entire book of like, follow your heart. Right. And that, again, coming from the new age, where it's all about following your heart, following your feelings, following what feels good. As a sinner, apart from Christ, that leads to death and destruction.
Yeah.
But, I think that with, I just like lost my train of
thought. No worries.
But
but go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, but with the Holy Spirit renewing the mind and the heart, what happens through the sanctification is that our desires and our will starts to align with God's. And so I think that, as a Christian, remembering that in our prayers, yes, there are moments where we can trust following our hearts, as long as, the Holy Spirit dwells within us, and it is God's desire and God's will that we're after. And then in our prayers, making sure that we're praying for God's will to be done, and when we are consistently living by that, then we can trust, and I've also found in my own life too, that like slowing down, being less impulsive, it's easier for me and leads to better outcomes when following my heart. And I know I'm not a man, and this book is specifically about the man's heart, but still with the heart, slowing down and being less impulsive, and what you're talking about regarding Romans, it's really also, the distinction between the first Adam and the second Adam. And are we in Adam, or are we in Christ?
Yes, exactly. And we have to be able to articulate that, to know what the basis of our faith is. Because if we just are looking at it as like, some sort of good luck charm, or like, I got my Jesus piece or whatever, and I'm good. There's no salvation in that, and nothing's changed. It's just that you wear a different outfit. Right. Nothing's changed on the inside. Right. Yeah. Hope that makes sense.
We'll wrap back around to the first question. So the first question I asked David was, you've shared with me about the uniqueness of a man building his relationship with God, which was like basically the premise of one of our conversations that you and I had privately. Can you talk a little bit about what that journey is like from your perspective?
What I liked about the book is, it really does challenge guys to embrace a part of us that is more savage, like that is more adventurous. And I like that, because that's really what, man, if somebody would have told me back in, August 26, 2007, I'd be living in Idaho. I'd be completely, I'd be a pastor, or that there would be people who actually do listen to me, that I'd be leading people, that I would be broken about my own family and stuff. Like I would have never believed it, but that's what happened. God did something there. So the whole perspective of reading this book is that this is not a journey that's a faint of heart. This is actually what my wife calls the hero's journey, where you pick, or even like Pilgrim's Progress, the same exact thing. You're picking up your sword, you're taking up the task that's been given to you because you're designed a certain way by God. And as me as a man, that's the thing that so many guys just, we're not really taught right now. We're not taught that you have a role individual to you that's been ordained by God. You've been designed for something specific. Like we're just supposed to, like what it talks about in the school system, you're supposed to have, these tame kids, these tame boys. I know I was straight freaking shenanigans. I was a little afro running around in circles. I couldn't even help myself. It's just, then I was hopped up on sugar too with freaking silver teeth. It was great. But that's like, that's what we're supposed to be, is like, we're supposed to be a little bit untamed, because that's how God designed us. There are some boys out there who are a little bit more, not like that. But most kids, most boys, they're trying to shave that masculine part of kids off to make them more docile, make them more feminine. And boys now, you see kids, dudes now are, they're jacked up because they don't understand that you are wild. and that's that's a piece of us, because God is untamed. You can't freaking put God in a box in this way. And this is why the Bible is so important. They're like, well, the Bible's a box. No, the Bible basically shows you the truth and essence of who God is, but that you can't tell people that to be like Jesus, you've got to be this nice person. Jesus wasn't always nice to people. Right. Jesus wasn't always out there trying to bless children and all that kind of stuff. Jesus was out there freaking jacking dudes. And then the worst piece of this that I think most Christians don't even, even on Christmas or on Easter, and I had to do this really, because I think I was guilty of this too. No one goes to Revelation 19 and talks about the Jesus of Revelation 19.
Well, and when I read the Christmas story, when he talked about going to Revelation 12,
Yeah.
I was like, why is no one talking about this?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, like, I preached on this about a year ago, and I think I freaked out my buddy Arthur, but because he's the head of that church. I was like, my God isn't in the dang manger no more.
Right.
He's not up on that cross. You're talking about an angry individual. Revelation 19 is not a nice picture with the robe dipped in blood with the freaking sword out. Like, that's not like, yo, you want to be this pacifist wearing sandals, Birkenstock Jesus. That's not Birkenstock Jesus. That's like, I'm about to chop your freaking head off.
Yep.
Because you sinned against me. I'm God, dude. You know what I mean? And that's insane to me. And this is where, like, I think that it's missed in the Christian churches. You want to get guys to understand who they are. You're the guy you're obviously not Jesus, but you're on that horse. You've got a sword. It's meant for something. It's not meant to be out there, trying to get over on girls and to increase your career and just to pursue these things that are outside of your design. No, it's to address the demons, the dragons in your own life, to become the person that you actually were designed to be. And that's what I think is so cool about what I read, because it's kind of like, it's not like the book's giving me permission, but I think it's kind of like God saying, I want you to understand, you are wild. It's okay. Like some of your inclinations, yeah, you got them because I put them there. Yep. I put, like, when you want to go out and you want to go, to play paintball and go shoot at something, or you want to take that stick and go try to save the princess, freaking like Mario Brothers. like those types of things. It's because that's how I designed you. And I want you to actually own that as an essence of you. It needs to be under control. Like I told you before, men are tamed chaos, but men also have to understand that there is a point where that tameness is removed and you are straight chaos for the right reasons. Yep. My wife knows there's something in me that she has a healthy fear of, because she knows that if it came to what I need to do, she's seen me do it before, where if it comes to what I need to do, there's no stopping what is inside of me. And I won't stop because I know what I have to do. And that's a part of being a man,
Yep. No, I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people also, when they look at the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, there's this misconception that Old Testament is like mean God and the New Testament is like nice
Mhm.
God. And it's like, well, then again, clearly you haven't read parts of the Gospels, or you also haven't read
Mhm.
Revelation. I mean, Revelation is
Yeah,
like nothing but war and battle and yeah.
yeah, the whole
Yep.
way through,
Yep.
yeah, and
That's such an exciting
and
book.
then knowing too, oh, every man's battle, that's the one, every
Okay.
man's battle.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another good one. Okay,
I
so
think
that
I think it's
I was
interesting.
like battle, wait, battle.
So this
That's a
leads
good one too.
this leads beautifully into the second question. I kind of want to give like I mean, I wrote it a little bit in the question, but I kind of want to give a little bit of backstory for the listeners because, you know, I think it's interesting looking at a woman's perspective approaching the Bible and a man's perspective approaching the Bible, and there is a commonality, but for different reasons. So when I had started reading the Bible before I was saved, but after I got saved in 2021 and I was reading the Bible, while I was reading, I started to have this deep understanding of what I was looking for in a man because of who God is. I started to finally understand healthy masculinity as provider, protector specifically. Um, and it completely transformed what I was looking for in a future husband. Um,
Hmm.
and so I think it's interesting when he talks about, men being made in the image of God also, but there being a warrior inside, because I think that he makes a great point, and you talk about also that men have over time, and specifically Christian men, kind of been tamed because of the Birkenstock Jesus persona. Like, oh, Christ is so,
Hmm.
love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Like, yes, the fruit of the Spirit matters. And there's a time and a place, of course, for those things.
Hmm.
But I think it would make a difference if men were taught a different way of approaching the Bible through that masculine perspective of like looking at God's characteristics in a masculine way, and then how do you apply that to your own life? So my question was, from a woman's perspective, I learned what I should be looking for in a man because of the characteristics of God in the Bible. From a man's perspective, how do you read about God's characteristics and apply that to being made in the image of God?
Well, so this is where the entire text is important, because like we said before in other places and other times, is that from Genesis all the way to Revelation reveals God's character. So you see in the Old Testament, like they talk about mean God. Okay, well, mean God for what? So was he leading Abraham into the promised land, and then the Israelites into Egypt, and then into the promised land via Moses and Joshua? Was he saying, hey, go give those people some nice flowers and bake some cakes with them? No, he's saying wipe them out, like everything, women, children, infants, all of it, wipe everything out. And it's like, whoa, well, God wouldn't do that. God, well, that must be angry God. And then you go to Revelation, hey, wipe them out. Like, this is what it is, man. And can you connect the dots there? Because then it's Acts 1. You go from Judea, Samaria, and you spread all the way out in the spreading the gospel. But Jesus also says, hey, take your sword. Like don't be afraid of you need a sword. Don't be afraid of protecting yourself. There's Christians out there that believe that it's wrong to own guns. It's wrong to know self-defense. They literally believe, oh, you're supposed to put your hands into the Lord. And when that's taken, that's way over spiritualizing everything. God doesn't ever say don't like take your defenses down. Like, it's say like we was talking about in the book, like turn the other cheek. Okay, yeah, they took that way out of context. Yeah, let somebody just beat you up. Like, okay, like, and this is what a lot of women actually and men do too in relationships, is they become freaking doormats.
Mhm.
They have no self-esteem or no ability to really understand who they are as individuals. But back into the masculine aspect of this, as a man, it's understanding and knowing that from cover to cover, it shows you the full gamut of who God is. You can't just hone in on one aspect of this and make that all God. That's putting God into a nice little box. When it says throughout all of it that God is not in a box for you. And that's why I think Revelation is so important, is because it takes away all the niceties that there is an actual heaven and hell, that there will be burning, there will be sulfur, there will be pain, there will be destruction, there will be all these things because God allows it and God does it.
Yep.
And then you see back in, you know, you go to Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, God was swallowing up whole families because they were doing things that were completely wrong. Like, yo, okay, how about when Samuel, you know, hacks up, was it the Amalekites, I think it was. I mean, and then First Samuel 17. It's like he just chopped the dude freaking up in front of people. Okay, and he's a prophet of the Lord. He's chopping dudes up. What did in fact? I mean, come on, like what did Elijah do? I mean, he's chopping 450. I mean, come on. This is like, you think about it, this is bloody. Okay, how about even like the tabernacle? This is, and this is just, I'm gonna get like kind of vulgar here. This is the most disgusting place ever. I mean, they're walking around with blood everywhere in that
I
place.
know.
Everywhere. Okay. And it's covering. Can you imagine what it smelled like?
Oh,
Like,
no,
dude, like,
that's like the one thing
like,
that we all talk about. We're like, can you imagine the smell? Gross. You're out in the desert.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah. You know, it's hot, dude. Like what? You know, like niceties here. Like, come on. Let's look at it in reality. Look at it in reality. Like, why did Moses stutter? Because he's talking to God. The burning bush. What the heck is that? Like, what is going on? This is the miraculous aspect of our faith. And so, being a man, knowing that there is so much complexity in just the human experience of our personality, it's the same thing with God. God is not a man that he should lie, or son of man he should change his mind. God is spirit. Okay. And we have to worship in truth and spirit. And that's the truth about our faith. What God did was he incorporated full humanity onto himself in Christ Jesus. So he's just like us now, fully glorified. That's the hypostatic union. I mean, Philippians chapter 2, the entire thing now is God owns not only his full persona as God, 100%, also the full persona as perfect man, the second Adam. This is freaking nuts.
yep.
So he owns all that stuff. And that's beautiful because all the things without living our life without sinning, that says, I can do that. You can't do that. Put your faith in me because you're going to jack this up because you do have sin. I'm trying to bring you out of total depravity into my grace, and my grace was sufficient for you and will save you because your faith is now in me, the perfect man, the perfect God. And that's where you see as a man, it's like, I need to have faith that this cat is not going to freaking let me down.
Yep.
I need to have somebody that's going to fight for me in places and times that I don't even know what to fight for. So I can go back to Hebrews chapter 4 and chapter 5 and say, he's got my back, double-edged sword. Okay, that's who God is. And it's not even freaking holding the sword. It's like his mouth. Holy smokes, he talks to the double-edged sword. That's freaking cool. I want to do that, man. You know, like no joke. And to know that that's a part of our faith, that's what is so important as a Christian man, is to understand that I don't have to always be nice because I'm not called to that. I'm not called to just be some pushover, because if I am, then I'm not walking in the gift that I've been given.
Right.
As a man, like you said, protector, provider, and lover. That's what I'm supposed to be for my wife. So, but when it says protector, there's no holds barred. I will not hesitate on things on protecting my wife. After the things that we've been through, she made me hesitate when we first got married. Oh, she don't do that now. No, she don't do that now. I stepped out on that, and I told her, I said, and I actually told her straight up, that'll be the last time you tell me how to protect you, ever, as we're married. Don't you ever tell me how to protect you. And if you do that again, we're gonna have issues. I'm a damn man. Don't ever tell me how to be a man. And man, you should have seen. She was like, "Whoa!" And then she was like, "Oh," you know. So I was like, "Yeah, don't make me be the other David that God has ordained to be protector." So, okay, that is what it is. So, but that's a part of the masculine journey. It's owning that part of us that's supposed to be savage and freaking owning it. Own it to the freaking fullest, because that's been given to us by God to be the savages that we have to be for protecting, providing, and loving our woman.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's exactly why God has the order that he has within the family,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, obviously Christ at the head, then man, then
Yeah.
woman, then children. And,
Yeah.
you know, as a single woman, as far as unmarried woman living by myself, I am dependent upon God being my protector and provider, right?
Exactly.
But as soon as I'm married, then there will be a man that steps in as that protector and provider, but he still gets his headship from God.
Yeah.
So there has to
Exactly.
be an alignment between who God is and who man is in order for that all to make sense.
Yes. In fact, I'm gonna send you. I'm gonna send you my last sermon. It actually, I preached on First Peter chapter 3, and it's called "The Power of the Weaker Vessel." And the thing that I basically was calling guys out. That's what I was doing. But my wife said, "You actually called a lot of women out without even knowing it." And I was like, "Really? My bad." So, but the essence of it is, if we guys are playing church and not actually honoring who God is in our role and who we're supposed to be, provider, protector, and lover of our wives, and we're not loving our wives correctly, and not doing so behind closed doors, but we're putting on a show in front of people and at church, hey, I'm blessed, brother, and all that crap, and we're not actually doing it at home, and we're knowing we're destroying our wives at home, God judges us on that.
Yep.
And that there is definite judgment on that. And I said we may be the head of our families, of our entire establishment here on earth, but the soul of the relationship is the woman, and the woman is a barometer of the health of the relationship. And if it's not, and if that health of the relationship isn't healthy, it's going to come out in prayer. And that I said, you guys want your wives to be praying against you? I mean, like, you want that? You want your wife freaking like telling on you to God? I don't think so. My wife was doing that to me our first year of marriage. Holy smokes, man. God freaking smacked me upside my head 10 months in because I was a freaking douchebag, dude. Like, I was just terrible, man. Like I was not handling my business. I was getting angry with her. I was like, and you'll hear about this in the sermon I'll send you, but it's like I was not being the man, and I had to go to her and apologize for being critical, for not being kind. I was working 70 hours a week. I was freaking flabbergasted, dude. And this is all being as a pastor, a full-time pastor. Yeah. So I'm up there, hallelujah into everybody as a pastor, and if my wife's getting jacked over at home, nah, man, house first, dude. Yeah. It's got to be my relationship with God, and then that spills over into my wife, how I treat my wife. But then it goes back around with how the wife is talking about her husband in prayer. That is a massive freaking power, man. Holy smokes, women. Yeah, if any woman's listening to this, okay, look, I'm gonna say this straight. All right, women have more power in the spiritual, in that aspect, against their husbands and family than any man will ever have. And I'm just gonna say that like straight up, okay.
And you've told me
woman
that,
can
like,
tell
the power of a godly woman. You're like, Ann, you don't even know the power that you have in prayer.
You don't. And this is why, and this is why it's so hard. And this goes into another one of your questions about how do women fight? Are they supposed to, like do the same things as men and yada yada? That goes into we can talk about the masculine and feminine for freaking probably hours and stuff. Yeah. But like me, I'm the man in my dang house. I am the only penis in my house. Okay. My wife is the vagina and I'm the penis. Okay. And she want to go flex up on me on that. It's going to be a bad day for my wife. But she understands that to receive means that she submits to God. And she submits also to my headship of her. But I can't ask my wife to submit to me if I'm a freaking jerk. Yep. Like, who does that? I have to be a man. I have to be a man after God, which makes me humble. And then to be a man after God makes me humble means that I love my wife in a loving, humble, and like as a fearful, almost fearful way, that this vessel, the weaker vessel in our relationship, I stand as the strength, she stands as the care and nurturer. If I'm not taking care of my wife, I'm not being the man, and I'm being just a boy freaking like that's a 46-year-old. That's detestable. And so many men out there just don't understand how to own their masculinity in that. They don't know how to love their wives, how to love their girlfriends in ways that's outside of selfishness. That's outside of taking something from a woman. Like, we're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to be the givers in that. We're supposed to be the ones that do all that we can to protect, provide, and love. That's what we're supposed to be.
Well, and I've been listening to a couple of MacArthur sermons lately, and he was saying in one of his sermons on Ephesians 5, that, when he talked about spiritual leadership and how men are the spiritual, husbands are the spiritual leaders, but he was like, look at the greatest spiritual leader of all time, Jesus, right? And he was a humble servant. And so he's like, being a spiritual leader has nothing to do with dominance over your wife. And like, yes, you are the authority, but that has nothing to do with dominance. And it was a
Yes.
really interesting sermon listening to that.
Yeah, because that's a secularized view of the Bible and of Christians, and they see misogyny and the toxic patriarchy BS. It's like, okay, you crazy person, I'm cool with all that, like, and that's all that's how they try to and then characterize Christians, because it fits their narrative of that DEI BS, the diversity, equity, and inclusion crap. Like, all that is just to remove the headship and protection for a woman, and so a woman's got to protect herself. It's like, okay, so what's a guy there for? A guy's there just to be a sperm donor, or just to be another feminized dude? No, I'm cool, man. I'm cool. It ain't like nothing against the feminized guys, but I ain't one of them. That ain't me.
I don't think you would ever get mistaken as a feminized man, David.
I might have been when I was younger. My wife called me a recovering vagina when we first met her. When I had her talking to my ministry a long time ago, it made me freaking laugh. I was like, that actually was a time where I actually kind of was like, this woman might be my freaking wife. When she said that, this chick is funny. Holy crap. Uh-oh, she might be my wife. God dang it. So, yeah, not feminine here.
Another thing that you and I have talked about, and this leads into question number 3. Can you talk a little bit about the father-son relationship and how that impacts a man's relationship with God? And then I'll just also kind of tack on. There are so many of us who grew up in non-Christian homes, or homes that maybe had the label of Christian home, but didn't actually live the biblical life. And so I think a lot of us don't even necessarily know how to get into biblical, godly marriages because it was never modeled for us. And then you add in the dynamic of difficulties between parent and child, but specifically this father-son relationship, which he addressed in the book. How does that impact a man's relationship with God?
Well, it's a direct reflection of it, because, and this is why so many men have a hard time calling God Father. Like he said, I had a hard time with it. And then when he was speaking right to me, I was like, this freaking dude. So it was like, man, I get all freaking emotional watching, like, reading this damn book. But the truth of it is, dads really do. I mean, they really do impact what an individual believes about God initially. Like me, and this is why I'd really, the violence, the fighting, the anger. Like, I grew up with that. I grew up having to fight my dad. So if my dad was abusive to my mom, I was the first freaking line of defense. I was the one that was fighting my dad as a freaking 9, 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid. I had, what am I supposed to do? Fight this freaking grown ass man? Like, that's not, it is what it is. So as a man, my dad being a sinful individual, me being his kid, not knowing, then if God is a father, and this is what my father's like, oh, I'm cool. I don't want that. I don't want nothing to do with that. Yeah, I don't need to do that. I get beat up by my freaking dad. I'm cool, So it's like, what am I supposed to do? And so the first impression that a little boy will have is, and this kind of goes into what the book was talking about. You want to wrestle with dad. You want to, test your limits. Punch dad in the face by accident, see what happens. And can I do this? Am I able to rise up into this occasion? And it's a hard. I'll be real with you. Like, that was really difficult. And it was crazy, man. That part in the book where he wanted the Goodwill Hunting piece. I literally cannot watch that part of that movie. I can't watch it, because when I first saw it, I was in a theater. I was like, oh my goodness, freaking emotional terrorism. I wasn't even a Christian at the time. Okay. And it's not your fault. I thought for the longest time that stuff was going on in my house because it was my fault. Yeah. And I owned it. I embodied that. And to even now, like, I'm 46 years old, and I'm way far removed from all this stuff, but it's still difficult because those things imprinted that those feelings, those situations imprinted themselves onto me physiologically. So I go through actually almost like a post-traumatic stress when I think about those things, because it's that difficult. And so if a man who's younger can actually latch on to real men who are willing to lead them out, then and to be that role, then they can mentor, like, those kids who are troubled. And then at some point in time, that kid who comes out of whatever they might come out of, abandonment, abuse, or whatever, or even absence, man, that's another one too. if a guy's just absent with their kids, then they'll have to address at some point in their lives, because they get married, they are going to be the same exact dude no matter what they do.
Yeah.
That's what that's the generational curse stuff that goes on, that's talked about in the Bible as well, is that you carry on the things that you don't heal from.
Yep.
And so any man, any boy has to go into that dark room and face those things about who that they grew up believing about themselves because of the people that were in their lives. I'm actually this got, and again, like a part of this book, this jacked me up, dang it, Ann, is that I actually was like, I just came from I had to do my cousin's funeral
Oh yeah.
about 2-3 weeks ago. and seeing my dad is, I mean, we've reconciled the last like 7 years or so, but it still kind of unearths those things, you know what I mean? Like those things kind of come up a little bit. And I realize I'm still mourning my cousin, but I'm also mourning what I could have been as a kid if my dad was just a better dude. My wife says all the time, like, if my dad, if she's talking about her dad, if my father-in-law had allowed these Christian guys into his life back in the day, he would have been a different guy. But he was, he wanted to party and stuff, so he wasn't a bad guy. My father-in-law actually is probably, if you ever met this dude, he's probably one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet in your entire life. This guy is just great. He's like a guy's guy, like really good. In fact, my wife's ex-boyfriend still want to have relationships with him because he's such a good guy. You know what I mean? So it's like, but that's what happens. And so men like that, if they can mentor younger guys and bring them into a relationship just with themselves, then the guy, when he grows up into becoming a man and then leading his own family, can heal through the things that he needs to heal through. That's a part of the man's journey, is to heal through the crap that we grew up with.
And you've shared with me in a previous conversation that there's kind of a time and a place for a man to be alone with God and really walk kind of one-on-one with God and not have other Christian men and mentors around him. And then there's also a time and a place to surround himself. So how would a man know when that's happening? Like what the timing is of all that?
First you have to ask. That's you got to be in prayer. I think that the daily reading of the Word of God is the most important thing a man can actually do, because in that you start getting inclinations about things in your life. So the first question really is, okay, God, what am I here for? What am I doing? And who am I really? Like, he's asking those questions. Then it's, okay, I got accountability. I got some dudes that I kick it with that aren't freaking like shenanigans like, it used to be a long time ago. Well, these guys are kind of holding me accountable to some things. We're growing together as men, as friends, whatever. We're doing that thing. But there is a point where you kind of start realizing, you know what, I think I got to level up. And that's the thing too about about men and women, is that women, and this is a prayer that women need to have, because it does come from women, by the way. Women in prayer need to ask God to make their man level up. That's a big thing. Like, level up. Like, God, I need my man to level up, and whatever that means. Okay. And then the next thing is that guy will get inclinations about how to do so. And it usually is having to break away from the crew, still staying obviously connected with family and kids and stuff like that. But it's getting alone and asking God, what is it that you're trying to make and shape me into? Who is it that I'm actually supposed to be? And then take that bold journey to accept the challenge with courage, without the fear of failure. Because if you're walking with God and you're in and even if things don't turn out the way that you think they will, you still walk with God. You know what I mean? And if you still walk with God, there's no failure in that at all. It's that you just basically walking on a cloud, and that's what God does, is he brings us out of that fear aspect of the failure that we could possibly, that we can all accomplish in failure. We can all fail. But what God does is he says, you can't fail in me. I'm the ultimate victory in you, And so it's got to be, so there's the question that has to be answered, and then the application. The question is it time for me to kind of break away for a minute? And then you get the inclination, yes, then go find out what God's got you here for.
Right. Okay. We probably only have time for like one more question, because I know that you're working. You're always so generous with your time.
Right.
But I do want to ask, because I think this is probably one that people, myself included, it's the hardest to discern. So what's your take on discerning between sin, Satan, and the world?
Oh man, that's a great question. So Actually, I'll give you like an example. Right now, my job, my job is actually pretty hard. I'm in a level that, man, of engineering I've never been in my entire life. And lately, the last like maybe like week or so, I've been feeling like, man, I'm just not measuring up. Like I'm just not doing well. And so I've been kind of down on myself a little bit. And you know, the first thing that you like, I have to do in this situation when I start feeling a certain way is I got to step back, right? I got to like, what the hell's going on? Like, what's going on in my brain? And actually, this kind of leads into stuff that I'm actually going through right now because of this book. Well, my first issue was, am I measuring up? Am I doing well? And am I smart enough? Like, that's a big deal. Am I freaking smart enough for this? I mean, this is some freaking brain teaser crap I'm doing all the time, right? And my first inclination was, man, you're not smart enough. Like maybe you freaking overstepped yourself. And I was like, what is that? Well, the next thing was, okay, where did that freaking come from? Am I smart enough? Where does that voice come from? When I was growing up, I was always called stupid. Like my parents called me that, my brother called me that. I never thought I was smart. And I've told you the stories about what actually turned out to be like my IQ and stuff. Like, well, and then people are telling me outside. My wife was telling me the other day, she goes, she goes, she's all so mad about this. She's like, I go to Costco and there's people who are like, oh, you're David Williams' wife. We're in freaking Idaho. Okay. This has happened all the time in San Diego. We're like, oh yeah, you're David Williams' wife, yada, yada. She goes, we're in freaking Idaho. How the heck is this actually happening to us in freaking Idaho right now? And so, and she said that the critique that people have, or not really, kind of the encouragement they have is, your husband's so smart. Now, and for me to hear that is one thing, but to me to believe it's another. Mm-hmm. So what am I hearing? What am I believing? And who's talking to me? So what am I hearing? Am I quieting my own voice that shows that people actually believe something about me because of the character that I actually have that says that there might be a higher level of intelligence here? Am I believing that because people are actually seeing that? Or am I listening to something else that says that's degrading me? And that's what the separation, the difference is. Obviously, I've got myself I got to fight with. I'm going to have a battle with myself no matter what I do. But the accusation, like what he talked about in that book, was actually super freaking clever from actually pointed out. There are accusations, but then there's also beliefs that we actually have, which is going to be the things I'm actually going to go to for my own stuff. It's how is it, what is it, and when is it that I'm hearing these things that talk about me as a person? And are these things that actually I would believe about myself? Well, easily there are things that I would believe about myself because I've said them about myself before. So easily used. Freaking fodder. I'm my own fodder. Why? Because the demonic is always around me. Since those angels are around me, right? So there's a voice there that's not mine, but sounds just like mine. I have to be able to discern me from them. And then my voice, knowing that my voice has been encapsulated by God, has been encapsulated by the Holy Spirit, and lifts me out of that muck and mire. So I know now, it's like, okay, that voice I'm hearing, no, man, I'm freaking smart enough. I just got to figure out this damn puzzle. Okay. It is what it is. The next thing is owning that belief, owning it, because if I don't believe it, then they win, and they ain't freaking going to win with me. I'm fighting, dude. Forget about it. So if I want to win in that, I have to be able to address it. The world is trying to tell me, yes, that's definitely hard for you, David. I don't know. The devil's trying to tell me, hey, David, you're not good enough for this. And then in my heart and my mind, I'm like, holy crap, am I good enough for this? But God's like, I made you for freaking this, dude. Like, come on, let's step up. Step up, man. And that's what I have to understand. Like differentiating between the devil, my own voice, and the world is one of the biggest aspects of discernment that we have to have as believers. This is something that we have to pray through. Proverbs chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and chapter 8. You have to pray those things. And you have to read about what it means to be a wise individual. It's taking a step back from what your first inclinations are about a situation, using discernment and saying, okay, I'm taking some steps back to get a good view of what's really going on. And then to do so quickly with efficacy, and then to do so and then react correctly. Because at any point in time, I could just basically throw the towel in. Yep. And God's like, I didn't make you to throw any dang towel in, man. You're a conqueror. You're freaking a wild ass dude. Like, come on, man. Like you're made for this. You're made to fight through this stuff. So then and that's where the differences are. It's having discernment to understand that they actually do exist, one, and then knowing that it tries to exist inside of you, in your head and in your thoughts. The words that you are hearing sometimes, that's not you. It just isn't.
And I think, yeah, the discernment piece obviously is so key. And I have noticed that my own discernment has gotten a lot stronger, spending a lot of time in the word, spending a lot of time in
Yeah,
prayer. And then, like I was saying earlier, slowing down. I mean,
yeah,
Satan works very impulsively, and it's the FOMO and it's the instant gratification. And so he will try to
yeah.
get us to to really react impulsively,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
typically when things fall apart. You're like, I shouldn't have done that.
Exactly.
I should have prayed on it. I should have waited on it.
Yeah, yeah. And then part of the masculine role too is, even when you make a bad decision, you own it.
Yeah.
It's like you accept the responsibility. Like the team that I lead now, it's like I've got some people that I supervise, and I praise, I in email. These guys actually kind of getting used to it. They're like, holy crap! Like this guy, I give people props, but then when stuff goes sideways, like the lead basically kind of came down on me about something that one of my coworkers actually had led me to do, that I thought I was supposed to do. I never said one word to my lead about it. I just said, okay, no, I own that. And but the person that did it by accident, they were appreciative,
Yeah.
because it's like I'll own the hard things, but I want to give the praise out. You have to have wisdom. You have to have wisdom to know who it is that you actually are, and then to know that the design that I may have may not be your design, but it may be somebody else's design. Whatever, God put us here for a reason, and it's to actually be conquerors. Even so, some of the stuff that we fight in between our ears and behind our eyes, like we have to fight through this stuff.
That's the biggest battle. That's the biggest battle.
Yeah,
Spiritual battle is the
yeah,
biggest battle for sure.
it is. It totally is.
What
Totally is.
if you were to kind of go back, and this is the last little piece, but if you were to give a piece of advice maybe to David when David first got saved, if you could go back, one thing you would have done differently, or something that you learned very early on, what would you say to men who are kind of newer in their walk?
And this is gonna sound crazy when I say this. Stay out of relationships. I would, because there's stuff you got to heal through. There's things that there's women out there and men out there who think that they are walking with God, and they're still walking in their flesh without even really knowing it. And there are, and because the battles haven't been fought yet. Even sometimes not even revealed. And to do so gives you time to know who you are.
Mhm.
I think that you were really wise about this, and I want to tell you. I mean, and we know all the stuff that's happened and stuff, but you're wise. Like you were able to make some decisions for yourself where you knew, no, you know what I mean? Like there's some things here that I shouldn't be doing, and you took the step. You made the right steps. Me, I made some steps early in when I became a Christian, where I was like, she's kind of hot, and she's a Christian, cool. I got run into shenanigans. I had to get out of it.
Yeah.
Learn who you are with the Lord, and then allow yourself to be pursued as a woman, or then to become a pursuer as a man. But learn who you are and your identity, and what your real name is, and what you're actually here for, before as a new Christian, because it's the simplest way of getting derailed. Relationships are the simplest way of derailing anybody in the Christian faith.
Yeah, that first relationship I was in after coming to Christ, that was not, I mean, we're still friends, it's fine, but like that was not, I was
Mm,
like, I should not have done that. But I think for me, it was also, once I learned the Bible and knew how I was supposed to be living my life, that changed the game for me. But again, it was understanding who God is in order to see what should I be looking for in a man.
right. Yeah. You're wise. You're wise.
David,
Hey
thank
man,
you.
give credit where it's due. Always, little sis.
This is the best. All right. Well, thank you
And
guys for
I'm
joining us. I'm sure David and I will have more to speak on in the future. As always, subscribe, follow David. I'll put your, because you got YouTube, a YouTube also, so I'll put your information in the description, and
But
I'll talk to you guys later.